We are at a very special chateau in the Loire Valley, Château de Brézé. And it has its genesis all the way back to around 1,000 years ago. What makes this chateau so unique is not what you see above ground, although that's amazing, but it's what you see
almost 20 meters down below.
There is a whole chateau underground. And we're going to take you on a journey to look at the largest underground fortress in all of Europe.
At first glance, Brézé plays the part. Creamy tufa stone, sharp Renaissance lines. But this isn't just a castle, it's a Trojan horse. Noble on the outside, savage underneath. They don't build them like this anymore. In fact, they didn't build any like this to begin with. This castle hides a secret in its gut, a network of caves, tunnels, escape routes, and underground lives carved into limestone. A castle underneath a castle. One for the kings, the other for the crisis. It might not surprise you that no one ever managed to seize the castle. And that's most likely because of the vast sprawl of troglodyte tunnels below that made enemies think twice. It was well worth it to build a deterrent to protect the treasure that sits on the surface. The oldest parts of the chateau date back to the 11th century. But like anything ancient and important in France, it's been passed down, broken apart, stitched together again, like a well-worn cloak. Over time, it became the stronghold of the Dreux-Brézé family. Then by marriage, the Colberts, the right-hand man of Louis XIV, took over. The chateau, as we see it today, took shape in the 16th and 17th centuries, a blend of Gothic bones and Renaissance frills.
You know, we know we're supposed to go that way, but it's always intriguing to look at spots down here that are not accessible, but you have to wonder. More inaccessible areas.
This place has been in the hands of power for centuries, and power doesn't like to look vulnerable. Inside, the salons are classic aristocratic theater. Painted beams in ultramarine, golden fleur-de-lis, oak woodwork carved into Gothic lancets and crowned with floral finials, the troubadour-style furniture, a sort of medieval play for 19th century aristocrats who romanticized chivalry more than they practiced it. This is the apartment of the Dreux-Brézé. It's less of a living space, more of a statement, a room that whispers, we survived revolutions and we still have our dignity.
It's some of the amazing detail on the ceilings and the woodwork. A lot of restoration has gone into this particular section of the chateau. It is just stunning.
Tucked in the corner is a room so small you could miss it if it weren't screaming in neo-Renaissance bravado. The bishop's study is a jewel box of fake marble, painted kings, and a lineage they made up but never painted over.
Isn't this absolutely stunning? This is a private prayer area or a study off the bishop's room. There was plans at one point to connect a chapel here, but they were never completed. But you see, you can imagine what it would have looked like. Incredible detail.
Down the hall is the Richelieu room, named for Armand Duplessis, Cardinal Richelieu, the king's right hand and master political manipulator. The Richelieu room blends 16th century bones with 19th century tribute, red damask walls, a grand fireplace, and the echoes of a family entangled in royal service, rebellion, and quiet tragedy. Claire Clémence, once a princess, fought for her husband during the Fronde and was left to die in obscurity. History doesn't always remember the ones who loved hardest, but sometimes the wallpaper does.
Wow. What a fantastic room. This was a room designed for Bishop Richelieu. And he did actually stay here And it was a very special accommodations just for a very powerful man in the 1600s in France.
A few steps further into the hall is the portrait gallery, where generations of Dreux-Brézé men watch you from the walls like they're still waiting for the king to call. Most were grand masters of ceremonies, basically the royal protocol enforcers, running the rituals of monarchy from Louis XIV to Charles X. They handed crowns, read speeches, arranged coronations, and occasionally got yelled at by revolutionaries.
Here's one of the Brézé family. This is the Marquis de Brézé. And he lived during the late 1700s to early 1800s. What a magnificent portrait. Another incredible room. This great hall took actually 150 years to complete. It is magnificent. Here we are at the end of the great hall, and you see the continuation on the cornice and on the walls and on the wainscoting, the trompe-l'oeil, which the French are famous for, to give the illusion that this was actually high relief woodwork. But isn't it gorgeous?
From embroidered chairs to carved out chambers, every chateau has a downstairs it doesn't brag about.
You know, in a castle, one of our most favorite places to visit is anything underground, tunnels, secret passages, and dungeons. Let's go take a look at where the dungeon used to exist.
Not every chateau had a dungeon, but Brézé built one deep enough to mean it.
You know, look at the heavy doors that were locked. And this is one place, if you walked in, you probably aren't going to come out. So this is the dungeon. Wow, can you imagine? It's a pretty small space, but it is not a place that you would want to come to visit. It is fascinating to look at how these were constructed. So here you are in a place that most tourists never see. Another dungeon cell. And take a look, this is the beginning of the underground below Château de Brézé. Let's see what we can see. Another space designed for storage, or another cell on the opposite side of the dungeon. You know, during a hot summer day, it's very cool in here, but that is not enough motivation for me to ever want to have been locked in here.
The dungeon was there to keep certain impulses in check, because deeper down, Brézé meant business. Welcome to the underworld. While most chateaux had cellars, Brézé went full mole. Over 3 kilometers of underground passages, rooms, stables, bakeries, even a silk farm, all hollowed into soft tufa limestone. Think of it as a medieval panic room the size of a village. Some of these caves date back to the 11th century, maybe earlier. This was a fortress before it was a chateau. During the 100 Years' War, when the English were playing house all over France, the people of Brézé took the fight underground. You don't build tunnels like this for fun. You do it because you're afraid and smart.
So we're continuing to descend below Château de Brézé. There's over 3 kilometers of tunnels, rooms, secret passages, storage, all sorts of rooms that were designed very methodically. If you look at the arches, you see this wasn't just an ordinary tunnel. This was very methodical. There are so many passages and rooms. This was designed under Brézé in order to protect the inhabitants from sieges, from epidemics, from anything that needed protection. In fact, these tunnels, there is only one entrance from the chateau and one entrance on the other side in order to minimize the ability for invaders or enemies to come in. So here we are in another storage area underneath, about 20 to 30 meters underneath Château de Brézé. Each one of these openings were actually go all the way to the surface where they would store grain. You can see right through here, there was actually an area that was designed for grain storage. And you see there are light shafts. You'd think it would be dark underground all the time. There's certainly artificial light, but the reality is they were very thoughtful in designing light shaft. So there was natural light coming into each one of these areas of the tunnel. All right, we're going to continue this journey.
The tunnels twist like intestines. You walk single file, brushing cold, damp stone, and you think, who in the world lived like this? Everyone at Brézé, it feels like. This wasn't just a castle under a castle, it was a city. They had a wine press, kept livestock, had kitchens, ovens. Imagine baking your daily bread under 30 feet of rock while the real world continued above. It's ingenious. The people of Brézé didn't just hide, they adapted. They built a parallel world, preparing for the worst while hoping for better. It's almost post-apocalyptic in feeling, except this was the Middle Ages, and the apocalypse showed up regularly. And when you come back up, out of the earth and into the dry moat, it's jarring. You blink in the sunlight like you've time traveled. In a way, you have. France is full of castles. Too many, some say, but few will stick with you like Brézé. Not because it dazzles, but because it humbles. It makes you wonder what you'd build if the world turned upside down. Would you carve a refuge in stone? Would you defend it? Would you survive? Or would you pour a glass of wine, sit in the dark, and wait for morning? It's a question Brézé poses, and one worth reflecting on. Thanks for coming along. If you want more stories from the hidden corners and extravagant hallways of France's magnificent chateaus, subscribe, leave a comment, or better yet, book a train ticket and see for yourself. We'll be waiting.